actually believe in rent control, and I don't own any house apart from the one I live in. With a shortage of rental properties compared to demand, then without controls, rents will increase continually. With large-scale council house building pre-1979, the private sector rented sector declined. The private rented sector began to grow again after 1989, and is now the second largest tenure in the UK after owned occupation. Increases in the private sector rent levels and the focus on reducing housing benefit expenditure has led several commentators, and I agree with them, to call for the reintroduction of some form of private sector rent control. The Rent Act in 1965, introduced by the Labour government led by Harold Wilson, regulated tenancies with fair rents set by independent rent officers. That ended with the Housing Act in 1989, brought in by the Conservatives, and we mentioned 1989 earlier by the date at which the increase in private rented accommodation started to go up. What are the benefits of rent control? Affordability, prevents displacement, neighbourhood stability. The arguments which are made, like Jonathan Soden made them, but I wrote this out before she even spoke, I expect is that it reduces the availability of rented properties and stops renovation and improvement. Firstly, the high rent on privately rented properties have driven out first-time buyers. I just talk about the area I come from, Plasmarl in Swansea. Initially, it had large numbers of privately rented properties, but as council houses became available, my family, like many others, moved to these new council houses, and the houses left behind were sold, and many people, via mortgage, became owner-occupied, and then undertook improvement of those homes. Now these properties are bought and made available for private rent. I must have missed a large-scale renovation of the cheaper privately rented properties in East Swansea. Alongside rent control, we do need the large-scale building of social housing. In fact, I talk about that probably more often than people would like to hear it from me. But we need to build up council houses at the rate we built them in the 1950s and 60s. But rent control increases the availability of houses to be bought by people to live in, reduces the cost of rental, gives security on rental costs, removes the incentive to move one tenant out to bring one in paying a higher rent. I mean, I urge everyone to support this today. This is effectively a Labour policy. It's something that the Wilson government brought in, which worked very well. Rolling back the tide of fairness to poor and less well-off people by the Tories in the 1980s got rid of it. We've got an opportunity to bring it back in now for the benefit of all the people renting in Wales. I urge everybody, especially my Labour colleagues, to support what is effectively a socialist solution.